Good morning. I'm Dr. Balance. I'm really pleased to invite you to a group of panelists that represent the Department of Defense within San Diego, and I'll introduce them, and then we'll kind of get started with some information. Okay. This year, he is the branch head at the NIWC Field Department. Mariah is here, and she is a scientific researcher in the biology area. Okay? And Brett's here, and he's a materials physicist with the NIWC Engagement Office. So now you have an idea, but you don't probably know exactly what they do, right? So that's what we're going to find out today, find out how they got to where they are, and what recommendations they might have for you as students on your educational journey. Okay? And we'll start with question one.
Please tell us about your role at NIWC Pacific and describe the educational path you took to get there.
Oh, geez. Oh. Pass the mic. Okay, so my role is very unusual at NIWC. I'm in the academic engagement office, and so a big part of my job is working with universities to improve our both research and development collaboration, as well as recruiting of folks from universities into NIWC. That's half of my job. The other half of my job is the academic engagement offices within our CTO's, Chief Technology Officer's office. And my job there is to work on technology strategy and trying to improve the work culture, as well as just road mapping and our engagement with all sorts of different outside entities, other elements of DoD, and elements of the business world. I first came to NIWC as a scientist, so we were called SPAWAR back then. It's a research base at the end of Point Loma. The way that I got there was pretty traditional for a scientist. So in science, you start off, you get your bachelor's degree, or sometimes you get an associate's degree first, and then you'll go to grad school. Grad school, if you go to grad school in hard science, I went in physics, is paid for. So it was a job, right? I got paid to work on my PhD. I did research for 6 years. So I was in college for 10 years. And then I stayed in college after getting a PhD for another 2 years, doing something called a postdoc, where basically you just are treated like a grad student for a couple more years at a new lab. And when I was done with that, I was really tired of universities. So that's when I got the job at NIWC. I left NIWC after a few years to go work in the startup community. Because as a scientist, you don't learn all these things about culture and networking. It's not part of that 12 years I spent working in colleges. So I went out to the startup world. I learned business. I learned networking. I learned management. I learned leadership. I learned all these different things that you don't really learn in a classroom environment in physics. And then I came back after doing a bunch of startup world stuff. So that was my journey. It's kind of convoluted.
But an interesting journey. And to be fair, I actually was on the board to hire you. My name is Mariah Arias-Thode, and my first name is actually Yolanda. My mom is Yolanda, though, so I go by my middle name. And I started at a community college. And I was 17, and my mom was a single mom, normal story, but whatever. And so I joined the Army at 17, right after I graduated from high school, because I wanted to go to college, and it was, I thought, a nice path. And actually, honestly, I've been really blessed, because for me it was a great path. But I do remember when I was 17 signing the paperwork, and they're like, hey, save all your pay stubs, because, so that when you retire. And I totally remember thinking, like, I'll ever be 37, right? What happened? So You know, I stayed in the Army throughout because they kept offering you bonuses and all that good stuff, and they paid for my college, honestly. So I started in community college, then I went to Texas, it was, goodness, Pan American, I'm from South Texas, so then I went to a 4-year college, but only for 1 year. Then after that, I transferred to University of Texas at San Antonio. And that's where and here's what I really think you absolutely should do. When I was in that 1 year, I saw a flyer to say to go to Louisiana State University for the summer. I was like, why not, right? It's a job, they pay you as an intern. So I did that. And then I went to UT San Antonio, and then I still kept going to LSU. I went to LSU for 2 summers, and it was fantastic because, you know, you're in Louisiana and you work in a lab and they're paying you, and I was making more than I would have made at McDonald's, right? And so then because of those internships, when I was at UT San Antonio, I applied for a summer internship here at Scripps Institution of Oceanography. That's going to be, you know, the University of California, San Diego. So I came here and I was eating lunch on the beach every day. And so I was like, sure, I'll go to grad school because they pay you, like Brett said. Now, to be fair, they don't pay you a lot. There were 3 of us, right, in a small place, and you're making no money, but you're still with other of your colleagues who are making no money. And so it was honestly one of the best times of my life, and you're working your butt off, right? But now I have my PhD in marine microbiology. So I'm actually an environmental microbiologist. And one of the things that I did for my PhD was, because I love bacteria, I mentioned it earlier, I find them fascinating. I find it intriguing that life can be so small and yet have so much impact, right? Like I remember looking at a drop of water and you see that it's clear, but from a lake, and then you look under the microscope and there's so much going on, it's crazy. And so that's what led me to study microbiology. So long story short, after the Army, I wanted to give, because I was in the Army all the time throughout that, and I sort of wanted to give back, I guess, and I thought that should somehow help me, so then I applied to the Naval Information Warfare Center, and granted, they didn't get me first off because I'm a microbiologist, and they only primarily hire electrical engineers, but they actually do need some biology personnel or people who know that at NIWC, because we also are in charge of environmental compliance, making sure that we're not polluting, right? Making sure we're good stewards of the environment. And so through persistence, I have knocked on the door, they finally hired me. And now I actually have a really fantastic team. I have like almost 20 people under me, so I'm kind of a PI, right? So I have, and we're doing energy from mud. But I'll go into that later, because you asked about the background. So, thank you.
Wow, you guys are so diverse. Wow, and then you come to me. Not going to disappoint you.
No,
All right.
you and Henry, come on.
Hey, my name is Judge Valena. I'm actually from San Diego. I went to San Diego State as well as like Grossmont at the same time, right? I went the more untraditional route than most of my colleagues over here. I went to San Diego State and kind of partied too much and decided to join the Army. My primary MOS in there was intelligence. I was a intelligence analyst that went human. If you don't know what that is, that's just, we provide analysis for some of the information that comes in, and we do different studies on people. That's what we do. So I did have a language, so I was able to go through there and went through the wars and stuff like that, from Bosnia through Kosovo to Iraq, Afghanistan, and all that stuff. So after my little stint in the Army, I ended up back here and went to the police academy. So I was a corrections officer for a minute, and then got picked up as a contractor for the Air Force doing special operations stuff, primarily satellite communications and networking. And then I got picked up by, SPAWAR at the time, as a subject matter expert in certain satellite communications. That's a lot of your military sat, which is your SHF band, UHF band, and then was kind of a repairer / instructor out there. So I was teaching a lot of the some civilians, those were all in those weird three little agency type people, and then into those the military forces on how to use a specific piece of gear. We call it GBS, which is Global Broadcast Service, and we'll get into that when you guys have some of those questions, right? From being a SME, I ended up being a project lead. From project lead, became a GBS lead engineer. Certain things like Starlink, what else? PLEO, MEO type satellites. I was the project manager for that at the bigger level and brought it into the Navy and installed it on certain ships and stuff like that. So, and then now I'm a supervisor. I happen to be a supervisor for 75 military folks and 17 civilians that are out here. We're on 32nd Street, but it's in charge of the supply system that we use on our ships and shoreside. They call it NTCSS, and I mean, what they say, a lot of the technology that we use, it's to win battles, but the system we're using is to win wars. So that's the current group I'm in right now. But thanks much for inviting me to this little panel. Right?
What is the most rewarding part of your career?
All right, let's start. So for me, I'm a scientist like Murat, right? And a lot of folks in science, we get really fascinated and I would say obsessed with the field that we're working in, right? And so my field, and you heard Murat talk about bacteria, right? So to most people, someone who's like, oh, bacteria are so cool, that's odd. But to a scientist, it's like, of course, bacteria are so cool, right? So my field is nanoelectronics, and when I worked the first time for the government, there was no such thing as nanoelectronics industry, and I really felt like I was working side by side with people who were in more conventional electronics. And I got to see firsthand, working with folks in DoD who were working on all sorts of other types of materials, gallium nitride, gallium arsenide, standard silicon CMOS electronics, just how far behind nanoelectronics was from being something that was real, that people could use. And that's ultimately what drove me to go do startup companies. And so for me in my career, being able to go out and make this new scientific field that I was working in and drive it towards something where we could have a product and we could sell, and people would buy it because it was useful, not because it was scientifically neat. That was super rewarding. I really like that. That's something kind of, if you're a scientist, scratching that itch is what we all look for.
Right, so rewarding. I think you can kind of get that I'm a people person, right? And one of the challenges that I found when I was in grad school is you're constantly asked to see how smart you are. And I guess I feel, and I did graduate, by the way. I walked out the front. I climbed in the window, I always say that, through the back door, but I walked out the front. But I really like that I have an interdisciplinary team. So I'm an environmental microbiologist. As I mentioned, we make energy from mud. I can't do that alone. And so we have electrical engineers, mechanical engineers, chemical, not quite an engineer, but kind of, Mario. And so I have a huge, diverse and multi-ethnic team, which I love, because we all are trying to figure out how can we extract more energy from mud, what can we power. Right now we're powering pH, temperature, oxygen sensors. What about the duty cycle? What about at the electronics point? Can you decrease the amount of power consumption that you have as it is? Like, most of these things actually are not COTS, right? Ultra low power electronics, most people don't think about that. So a lot of the group that I work with really focus on how can you get from a milliwatt to a microwatt of power that is required in order to do something. Can we put this at the bottom of the ocean. Well, right now, yes, but how do we get there? Okay, we put it with people, right? We dive, we put it down. Well, can we drop it from a ship? Can it go deeper than the 30 meters? Can you drop it from an airplane? And then what kind of form factor do you have to build? So it's all of that, those questions that we work together as a team to try and solve. And I really, I thrive in that. And so, and that's one of the things that we're doing. For example, we're going out to Guam to go deploy. And so, okay, we need to make sure that the units, when they come back up to the sea surface, they interface with the satellite so we can find them in the ocean, right? And that's not that simple. Those things, how do you get something to the bottom of the ocean and have it come back up when you want it to? And make sure there's not corrosion, and then what about pressure? And there's all of these multidisciplinary factors that play into my work. And had you asked me when I was in grad school that I would be doing this, I would, no way, right? And so one of the things that I really have loved about working at NIWIC, and there's some things I don't, but some of the things that I really love is that if you bring in money and you have an idea, you can kind of do whatever you want. I mean, as long as it's Navy related, right? But if you think about it, energy from mud to power sensors, we're trying to commercialize that for aquaculture farms. It's not a Navy thing, right? But it is something that can be useful for other people. And also, eventually, maybe even climate science, whenever we think about, you know, because we're trying to model pH, temperature, and oxygen, and things like that. And all of that is important for how water's flowing throughout the world. And then that tells you the salinity, it'll tell you how fast icebergs are melting or not, right? So this is all kind of cool. So I think my thing is the multidisciplinary interactions.
Thank you. Oh my gosh, that's a lot.
Well, come on, Judge, you've got a lot.
In the tactical
You can
realm.
Iraq,
In the tactical realm.
Yeah, but the tactical is important.
Of course, of course. Rewarding, that's an interesting question. So what we do here, especially what division I'm in, we provide a customer service. So whatever these bright people here do and what you guys are gonna do eventually, right, create things, we implement them on the ships. So we see those bright young faces and be able to use that gear. And we know that gear is there for them to keep them out of harm's way. So one of the rewarding things is watching that person not know anything and then start becoming a subject matter expert in that person's gear, right? That the other part is not only are you guys creating something, but you guys are also providing the necessary tools these guys can so they can create decisions so we know these guys can stay out of harm's way. So that's one of the most rewarding things I've seen a lot of scientists and engineers and future engineers do, is create things that are amazing and that we put it on the ships. I mean, I had one engineer, he helped me with Starlink. He goes, no, that structure isn't strong enough to support that satellite dish. I don't know if you ever see what a Starlink looks like, but it's a flat dish, about yay high, right? But you're on a ship, right? So what you're gonna hit, you're gonna waves, rolling waves, so you're like this. Or you're gonna hit winds that are more than 15 knots, right? So we need those special mechanical engineers and structural engineers to figure that out, do the math, because I'm not that bright. I'll tell you that right now, I'm not that bright, but in that sort of way, right? So, but those are the rewarding people when I see their eyes glow and go, I can do that math, right? I can do it, and come out and become structurally sound pieces of equipment, and that brings joy to my heart. So. Thank you.
What are the most important hard skills and soft skills related to your job?
So for my job right now, the most important hard skills are really simple. I need to be able to use Outlook and Word and Excel. PowerPoint. PowerPoint. Teams. PowerPoint. because of the role that I'm in, I'm not actively in the lab anymore, right? And I would say going back several years when I went from being in the lab to running lab groups, those were the skills that were important: budgeting, planning, communication. And those start blurring the line between hard skills and soft skills, right? So, creating a budget maybe is a hard skill, but communicating and trying to motivate people, understanding what other people's motivations are around you, aligning people's motivations together to form teams, helping to coach people. I do a lot of coaching these days. And then, scheduling, right? Making sure that I'm able to do the things that I say I'm going to do. I don't overcommit, and I do everything that I can to kind of help the people around Southern California and the universities that want to interact with us. So there's a lot of that kind of stuff, a lot of talking with people. Probably, I've been back at NIWIC for about a year. I have a PhD in physics. I've run businesses. I've kind of talked with VCs and had VC funding. I've done all sorts of different things. I've launched products. I have friends at Intel. I work with all sorts of stuff. The most impactful thing I've done since I've been back at government is every Tuesday I bring donuts to the library and encourage people to come and talk. That has been the most important, impactful thing I've done. So all the hard skills don't really matter in the face of a box of donuts and an invitation to come talk.
Good point. And they're good donuts.
They are.
Hey, wait, I'm missing out. Hold on.
Yes. No, so hard skills, I mean, I have to know about oceanography, right? Basic things in oceanography. And again, I remember at one point, because I was doing a lot of the electrical engineering myself, and I don't know if you've ever seen resistors, right? They have these little bands, and you have to, you figure out what those are, right? When I was doing the work myself, because that's the thing is, I had an ocean engineer who was my lead. So before I became the lead, and he's like, you need to set these up, and you need to figure it out, right? The electrical connections and all that. And I was like, I bet I'm the only microbiologist who knows how to read a resistor. I was very excited. So those are the kind of hard skills, is trying to learn what others are doing and be there with them. And the soft skills, communication. I mean, honestly, communication. Like, I have some people in my team, and they're extremely intelligent, but sometimes when they talk to you, it sounds like they're criticizing you. And I have to take a step back and go, hey, it's for the betterment of everything. Don't take it personal, right? But he's right. Like, I need to consider that. I didn't consider that. And so I think that's the biggest thing, is don't take it personal. We're all trying to get to the end together, right? And we all have our positives and we all have our negatives. And one of the other soft skills that's super important is logistics. Oh my goodness, like, I need this to go out by then, so what do you need to do to backtrack to make sure that that happens, right? So, yep, I think that's kind of it. Don't take it personal, and logistics. Oh, and money. God, money. Jesus.
Well, thanks, because it is STRL time, guys. Come on now. If you don't know, it's kind of assessment time for civilians right now. So being a supervisor with these guys, it's a little bit different than what I was when I was a subject matter expert, right? So working as a subject matter expert, the hard skills were kind of know what you're going into, like mathematics, electronics. If you're a computer science major, know networking, Cisco. If you were like an electrical engineer, make sure structures, make sure voltage is good. Those what you learned in education. Yeah, obviously you're going to use those skills inside the things you're going to be working at, projects you're going to work at NIWIC, right? The biggest hard skill I would probably put in is bring things to the table, right? Bring your opinions into your group, because you'll be in an individual project, and each one has its differences, compared, because all those projects become one big project and it goes onto a ship, right? So seeing the facets of all from beginning to end and getting it onto a ship, it's one of the skills you could have. The soft skills, there's a lot of it, you could use that, right? You could, communication's one, planning's one, you're that. But the biggest thing is listening, because a lot of these guys, they've been in the Navy, they're a little salty, they'll say a lot of four-letter words, you're gonna go, what? What's that mean? But also, you know, listening to them, and you know, there's some experience inside there. May not be totally the right thing to do, but that's where collaboration happens, and then one thing leads to another, and then you create a great product that goes out there onto the platforms and stuff like that. So listening is one of the biggest things you can do, and then you know, and like I said, providing input, feedback is the other, right? Sometimes things don't make sense, and you're going to go, why do we keep doing this? Because it's rudimentary and stuff like that. But there may have been a process behind it, like, hey, there's some guidance that had to be put in there. Specifically, if you're working with like aircraft and drones, right? There's only a certain tolerance you could do. If that tolerance goes away, they have to change a bolt. You know, going back to logistics, right? My system actually regulates which bolt needs to go away after a certain amount of hours in flight time. You know, some engineer out there, some smart guy went 10,000 hours, and that has to be removed, right? So that's one of the things you got to work with is that, you know, listening, providing feedback, collaboration. That's the biggest things you guys could bring into the table. Thanks.
What type of work could a person do within NIWIC with an industry training certificate or associate's degree?
That's you. No, I'm just kidding. I have
I think that there's
plenty.
there's a ton of work you could do, right? So not just at NIWIC, but when you're doing some sort of technical work, right? So if you've got an engineering team, if you've got a science team, most of the people there are not the people with the PhDs running the thing, doing the budgeting, getting the funding. Most of the people doing the work need to have practical skills in a lab or in the technology that you're working in. So someone with an associate's degree or an industry certificate in bio lab work would work at a company that you're going to have most of the people in the lab would have that kind of certificate, that kind of background. Here at NIWIC, we're going to tend to have more people that are on the computer science and electrical engineering side, but we don't need everyone to be PhD level, right? We want people who have practical skills, and that's what these certificate programs are. So you do everything from cyber defense, installation, work in R&D, do project management, do program management, all this kind of stuff is open to you. Yeah.
Right, and so, you know, I have a big lab, and actually one of my persons worked at HP, Kyocera, Hewlett Packard, right, as a technician. And when I met him, he was like, but I'm bored because I learned something and I like it, but then you just keep doing the same thing all the time. So, and there was something about him that struck me that I was like, are you willing to be flexible? Are you willing to clean up mud? Are you willing to, you know, do all this stuff? So I hired him as my technician because you need a technician, honestly. And so, and once we start hiring again, he's trying to get his machinist right now because he is interested in doing other things, but he's fantastic at organizing. Oh my goodness, I've never seen somebody create such a great organizational system. Like, for example, we have to sew because we use carbon cloth as our electrode, and you have to sew the edges so that they don't fray because it's just cloth. And so he's like, hey, when this one has, I'm not gonna tell you what they are, but when this has this food source, I'm gonna make it green. When this one has this food source, I'm using white thread. And when this one doesn't have anything, I'm using black thread. I'm like, wow, brilliant, so that you can look at it right away and know, hey, that's, you know, this one has this food source, which is, I would have never thought of that, right? But he's really good at that, and so I think the biggest thing is, yes, we do hire. I'm hoping in the next round when we start hiring to hire him on, because right now he's a contractor, but because he's flexible and just really such a fantastic asset. And I think the biggest thing for me is people that are flexible, like able to do multiple things and not say, oh, I'm so smart, I'm not gonna wash dishes. You know, right, like I have my 4-year degree. I've had people like that. I've had interns that come in and they have their, right, they're working on their computer science or whatever. They're like, yeah, I don't wanna wash the dishes. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm not hiring you. You know, but just being able to be all around rounded and be helpful to the team and smile.
Hey, smiling goes a long way. Hey, I'll tell you, I'm in the department where a lot of them have only associate's degrees and certificates, because a lot of those guys are the technicians that go and put it on ships. All right, so the field department will do that. That part of the thing is, you know, logistics and implementation, right? So if you're on our ships networks, which we call canes, those guys mostly only have certificates in Cisco or cyber, or some of them have CCNAs, but most of them, yeah, have a little bit of experience maybe because they were in the Navy, but they also came from a lot of the community colleges that are here, right? And then inside those, there's, you know, different things within the certificates you do. Primarily, I see them with doing networking or cybersecurity. So if you're doing any CSWF, cybersecurity workforce type stuff, they call it RMF, which is like the security postures of certain software. They go and penetrate test it. You guys familiar with that? I don't know if you guys, so they go in and see if it's a vulnerability inside there, and then they do reports and they set it up. A lot of those guys don't have 4-year degrees. They usually have a degree in cyber, or not a degree, but a certificate in cyber warfare, or in what you call it, pen testing. So like ethical hackers. A lot of that happens in the 5.0 codes, which is our R&D testing and evaluation type people. And it's a necessity out there because obviously vulnerabilities are there. Networks are always vulnerable to attacks. But AT&T this weekend, it went down because, you know, they were kind of getting hacked at the same time. So we have a lot of those guys that do that type of testing, pen testing, going in and try to hack into our systems so they can be less vulnerable out there, and then provide reports out there for that, as well as, you know, software testing. A lot of those guys only have basically the basic security plus, right? And they're just really system administrators. They go in, they implement basic DApps, which is the updates that you guys go get. When you hit enter on an update, that's a lot of those. Cloud networking, you know, a lot of those guys have that Cisco cloud cert, and they go in and, you know, start working that type of architecture, network architecture. So there are a lot of those guys, and they're really implemented in our department and that stuff. So.
I got one more thing to add. So I just thought of something else for you guys. So one of the things that I do is I interact with the semiconductor industry kind of for the Navy. And the reason why we don't have a lot of fabs, electronics fabs in the United States is because we don't have enough people to work in them. We're short a couple 100,000 people to really be able to have the semiconductor industry be back where it is. And that's not a couple 100,000 people with PhDs, that's a couple 100,000 people with certificates and associate's degrees that can do lab work, that understand how to follow a protocol. If you can follow a protocol, and I think you guys are mainly bio you're learning how to follow a protocol. If you can follow a protocol, you know what a buffer is, you know how to use tooling. You could get a job with a semiconductor company working in the clean room. And we're short, like I said, hundreds of thousands of people to do that. So that's something I would really take a look at if you've got any interest. Go ahead.
Okay, I have a few questions, but my first question is, what is the pay for that kind of a job?
Okay, yeah, good question. What's the pay for a job like working in a semiconductor foundry? I don't know the exact number, so I can't give you a guess. But as tools get more automated, the job becomes less about doing repetitive work and more about becoming an expert in using a tool and diagnosing when the tool needs something done. So it's not a low value job. It's a job that has a lot of value to it. And so I know that right now there's a lot of fabs being built in Arizona. The jobs that are there they're gonna be several steps above working in retail or something like that. They're going to be good jobs. When people talk about kind of good manufacturing jobs, that's what they mean, is working in something like a semiconductor fab, working in something like a pharmaceutical company.
Thank you. And so my next question is for everybody. Or is all of you are veterans, right?
I'm not.
No? Okay. Well, for the veterans, how does your experience in the military translate to your career?
I think the biggest thing was the multi-diversity, right? And working with anybody, because you're not forced, right? But yeah, you are. So you've got your squad in the beginning, and that's the people you have, and that's all you have. You can't reach out to a different squad. You have to figure it out yourself. And I think that was the biggest and coolest thing. And, at the end, we all loved each other. And it didn't matter the politics. It didn't matter. None of that mattered. It mattered, how are we going to do this task and succeed, right? And keep each other alive. I'm very fortunate and blessed. I've never been in a wartime situation. I've never been shot at. But I kind of purposefully did that because I went for a medical laboratory technician. And then after the PhD, I became a research microbiologist. But I used my skill set to try and save lives. That was one of the things I remember basic training, train to save. First it was shoot to kill. Then later it was like, train to save. So, but yeah. So I think that's it, just working with others and so on. And something about the pay, so with the government, like the person I was referring to, we don't pay him a whole lot. I think he's gonna be making $30 an hour. And I'm trying to raise that, but the benefits are fantastic. Actually he's working through a different company, but I made sure that, because I want to treat people fairly, and I think we all do. So I made sure that he had access to fantastic benefits, because I think, you need your health and dental and all that stuff.
Awesome. Hey, one of the biggest things, being a veteran and then coming to a DoD type situation, is the idea of mission accomplishment, all right, to job satisfaction, all right. We know there's a start and an end, and understanding that what you do now supports something later on, and understanding what we could plan and put into place and be a team and collaborate with everybody else will one day reap its rewards. Why? Because we know that sailor will be, or a Marine, or Army, or was it Guardian? So we'll be out of harm's way when we do some of the work. I know there's a lot of systems out there in NIWIC that are super cool. Like we talk about this one thing called Link, and that helps with decision making, but a lot of it has to do with intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance, right? And getting a group of team to build that with bigger teams, and then with our partner nations and all that, using that same thing. We understand, there's a goal. Politics aside, and all this stuff, right? We understand that, you know, defense of the nation and a lot of the employees, civilian and military in our place understand that, you know, there's a mission there, and that mission is to protect the United States of America. And regardless of whatever climate we are in right now, that is our sole fact. And understanding we have one mission, and that goal is like number one to us. That's a big thing for us. And being a veteran in this organization, I'm proud to be part of, and understanding that what we do now will always help people later on. And that's the crux of that. So, thank you.
Hi, my name is Stefan. I have a lot of questions, so if anybody else needs to step up or want to ask, I'll pause in between each question. My first question for you all is, are you government or are you contractor?
It's a good question. We get that a lot, right? And so we are all government employees.
Okay.
But like you heard Mariah talking about, someone on her team is a contractor, so we'll often work side by side with contractors.
Okay. And then if you're government, what GS position would you start off in once you get on the government side working for these agencies?
It depends.
And it does.
It depends on the type of job it is, right?
Okay.
And your degree and your background.
You're correct.
Okay.
I was both. I was a contractor before. And then going there and going to the government side, as Mariah said, the benefits outweigh a lot of the pay for that, right? But as a contractor, yeah, you can make your money early, but obviously contracts die. I mean, we're looking at what happened now with like Doge and things like that, right? We had to reshape our workforce, right? So that's one of the things. But civilian work is worthwhile, and you know, it's I do say try, right? Try it, and if you don't like it, you know, there's going back to contractors and that. So.
Okay. Thank you. Now, being a veteran, I know a lot of veterans do get out of the military and they don't have a degree in some sort of field. Now, how was hiring process at your office relate to being a veteran but have the experience to suffice for that?
Right, so you're right, I didn't have anything that was tangible, right? I was lab tech, right? And I was trying to work at this electrical engineering facility. But what it did offer me was, I think, 5 points, right? So whenever I had to go through USA Jobs, so, and now I have now 10 points.
Okay.
So, you know, so it does help you, like, to rise a tiny bit more, for sure. Did you have?
Oh, sure. It did help. Being a veteran did have its advantages, especially where my area of expertise was. They did need certain skill sets that each one has, and it depends on what project you're looking for. I know USA Jobs is very cumbersome, and I fully understand that process going through it, right? But going back to, you know, if you're a contractor working for that project, sometimes that's a good thing. And sometimes they hire within to do that too. So that's a possibility out there also. But being a veteran, you do get preference points. That is always a possibility out there. But also what you've done previously also does matter. So if you were a civilian, you know, if you're doing networks, working in a network farm or doing a tier 1 help desk will always help in that consideration for that job. So don't get discouraged. I'm not gonna lie to you. I did apply to a lot of things in USA Jobs when I first got out. Didn't quite get them, but it does take time. So and find that right job, and skill sets are a big thing. So try to look at that posting and make sure things fit in that realm. So,
And networking.
And networking.
networking.
Absolutely, yeah.
Lots of stuff.
And even without being a veteran, networking, 100%. You really should talk to people, and that's how I got it, right? Is because I applied, didn't get it, so then I started working with them, and I did some stuff with them for free, so that they could see that I was worth it, sort of. Yeah. Right? Yeah. So, and then they hired me, and here I am.
Yeah, networking's super important, right? And then I would say, I'm not a vet, but I prefer to try and hire and recruit veterans because you have to understand working for DoD. You have to understand the culture, and if you're not a vet, you can work to understand the culture. It takes time, but if you are, you're a step ahead, and so you're going to get up to speed faster. You're going to know what to do. There's situations I've turned to coworkers and I've said, the admiral's coming in the door, I have no idea how to talk to an admiral. Can you do this for me? Right, so if you've been in uniform, you know how to handle some of those kinds of situations. And so it's definitely valuable to us.
Okay. And then a question for the oceanography field, right? I'm a underwater acoustics technician by trade.
Oh, fantastic.
So I'm very well versed in oceanography and all that. When it comes to your field, I know you have a lot of different divisions within your office, correct?
Yeah.
Do they all work on different things? Like you have one specifically for engineering, one specific for electronics?
So, right, our codes, I'm in the Applied Sciences Codes division. So I don't work on just one project. Nobody in my branches works in one project. We all work on multiple projects. And so your expertise would cross multiple, and y'all's expertise would cross multiple areas. And one of the challenges for us is we're not paid like the GS system, actually. We're a pay-for-performance organization, so we have to bring in our own money. You have to have somebody who's funding you, and so you have to always look for your job, even once you have your job. Right, but sometimes, like I've been on other projects where my project money drops, and I see somebody else, and they're like, "Hey, we're trying to do figure out best practices to make sure we're not putting copper into the ocean, and so we're going to try sweeping." And I'm like, "I'll sweep, I can sweep," you know. So you have to be flexible, no matter what. You have to be flexible, and yeah, you would probably work on multiple projects with your expertise, with all of y'all's expertise. You all have something. You know, and so, and like you mentioned something, I think about if you just have a lab background, there are many labs, like Brett said, at Nightwick, and as long as you can follow a protocol, and you're smart enough to realize when, hey, that doesn't sound right, maybe it's written wrong, or maybe the machine's not working, that's what we really want you to excel in.
Okay. And then along with that, the mud energy thing you were talking about, is that a government request? Like, did the government
Well, think about it, right?
to-
So here's the deal. We're producing electricity from mud. It is not a lot, okay? It is on the order of maybe 200 milliwatts. So if you think about it, then most, Kyocera, you know, Qualcomm, they don't want that. That's not enough for them. So big industry's not gonna do it. But if you think about a sensor that you can place in the ocean for a very long time, and essentially, you know, we've had them work now for 3.5 years, you don't need to change out the batteries, right? That's kind of brilliant. And so that's why we're trying to go into aquaculture, where there's actually places that are so big, and you know, that way you don't have to go and row your boat or use your steam, your gas, right, to get to these places to monitor. Like, we actually can just put sensors in place, leave them there, and then we have something that tells you, hey, the pH is wrong, or something's off, or you need more oxygen here, or whatever. Then you're saving electricity, you're saving, you know, time, all that stuff. So it's really, the government didn't ask me for it, but we saw a need from the end users, and that's why it's nice to work with veterans, because they're in the field and they tell you, hey, you know what would be great is, and that's what drives a lot of our work, is them saying, you know what we're missing is, or you know what you could help us out in is, and then we're like, oh, I think I can figure that out, and so that's kind of how it happened. Somebody wanted a sensor that lasts a long time so that they don't have to keep changing batteries out. And plus, some of these things, you put them like they're bigger than this. You throw it out in the ocean and then it works for 4 months and then that's it. And now you've polluted the ocean, right? And this may cost $100,000. That's kind of stupid. So we're trying to increase that. Right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Last question to you. Where is Newick?
Niwik.
Newick. I know it's not Newick, but
Yeah.
Newick.
No, that's okay. There is a Newick.
Yeah.
There is a Naval Undersea Warfare Center in
Rhode
Rhode
Island.
Island
Yeah.
And Washington.
and
And
Washington.
there's NSWC, there's, in DOD, there's no N to acronyms. Everything's an acronym. There are a lot of things start with N.
For the Navy.
for the
Because,
Navy.
yeah, there's Army, there's Air Force, there's Guardians of the Galaxy Force, you know.
all of it, right? And so, yeah, and it's all, they've all got their own acronyms and their own titles and things. NIWIC Pacific is, if you go to Point Loma, and you go on Catalina and you just keep driving like you're gonna go to the lighthouse, right? So there's the Cabrillo National Monument at the end. So if you try and go to the lighthouse, you will drive right through part of NIWIC. So that's where topside is and seaside. These are two parts of our base. I work topside, right? If you go down the hill from topside towards the bay, you'll get to bayside, and that's where Mariah works.
And he works in Old Town.
He
Old
works
Town and 32nd Street.
So if you go to the Old Town train station, right, and then you just go south a little bit, you'll get to these big, giant buildings, right, with lots of fences around them. That's the Old Town facility, right? And I don't know where 32nd Street is at.
32nd Street's where the Navy base is.
Yeah.
It's off 32nd Street in Maine, right, or something?
Yeah.
You exit Main Street
Roger.
in,
Yeah.
National City.
Okay, so it's like right across from Third Fleet? The Third Fleet building?
They are right across from Third Fleet.
We're right across from Third Fleet in Point Loma.
Okay.
But there's labs strung all throughout that area.
Okay.
So that whole battery, they call it Alpha Battery over there, that's all NIWIC in that area. Next to the cemetery, next to, they have labs all within inside there.
Okay. And we have buildings in Philadelphia,
Yep.
in Hawaii, in Guam,
Japan.
So
Charleston.
Charleston, yeah, all over. Yeah.
And we work internationally with international partners as well, so we work collaboratively.
Yeah.
Well, I guess that's a good follow-up question. Do you travel a lot for your job?
I do, but I like to and I wish to, right? You don't have to. You can if you want, and then you don't have to though. So, like some people on my team, you know, they never want to get on a ship, right? And I'm like, okay, you know, she's like, nope, don't sign me up for that one. But others are like, yeah, I'll go. And then one of my colleagues went, and she's like, well, I'm gonna wear that patch because she was not feeling well, you know. But yeah, so it's up to you. It's not up to you. Right now, travel's hard, which is silly. Honestly, because we're not, like, we go and we're working all the time, right, when we travel, because it's your tax dollars, okay? And also because I have 3 kids, so I'm like, you know, I go and I'll, like, you go and we're sometimes in 4 different places, and I'm like, okay, at 5 p.m. we end there, but we're gonna drive to the next town so that at 8 a.m. I can be in the next place, and so on, right? So that we can be efficient with time, so that I can come home.
Yeah.
It's also dependent upon your project.
Yeah, it depends on the
So
project.
if your project is high visible, meaning that it goes all the way up to the president / Department of Defense and stuff like that, they're traveling all the time. I was in a project like that. I was like 90% travel initially, and then as I got promoted / accreted, eventually it lessened. So, but every project's a little bit different, and it's dependent upon the job that you're. So if you're in a lab, a lot of them don't travel. A lot of them will do work specifically at that. If you have like certain like DARPA projects and stuff like that, oh, they're gone all the time, right? So, and if you're working like with different platforms type of ships, or like I worked soft, so I did a lot of testing with those guys, and I was, you know, in different places.
Soft
different places.
is?
Special operations. So I did a lot of that. Were you at STG?
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. So yeah, I worked a lot of that type of areas and stuff. So
Okay. That's all the questions I have. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
So I only have a couple more questions too. So my first question is, would I be able to work at NIWIC and continue my degree path?
Yes, yes. Absolutely, yes. So, for example, the person I was talking about, he chose, he's a contractor, to work 32 hours a week so he gets all his benefits, and 1 day a week he doesn't, so that because he goes to school, so he does that as like most of his schooling, right? And yeah, you can always.
Yeah. So that's one of the things that my office helps facilitate is we have multiple programs where if you come in, so actually I should have tried to get Joanna to come here, right? So Joanna Patinsky's Dr. Patinsky is our quantum lead. She's the #2 quantum sciences person in the Navy R&D enterprise. She came in without a bachelor's degree. We put her through school, through PhD, everything, right? So we have programs that will help you do that locally, or one that's very popular with our staff is at Naval Postgraduate School in Monterey. So there's a lot of different options for if you come work for NIWIC and you want to continue your education, we will pay for it.
It's competitive though.
It is competitive.
So some
you've gotta
people
be ready.
some people don't do that part, right? They don't get it paid for, they just go to school on their own. You know, I have somebody who did that, worked on his master's at night. Yeah.
Well, that's interesting because my GI Bill is almost out, so I would need someone to pay for the rest of my schooling. My next question is, do you have any like human health projects at any of your?
So there is the Navy Medical Research Center. I would think that's the primary human health. They're located around us somewhere. I've never gone, right? But they are somewhere, and they do research on that. There is also, we have a very small group that works on what's called cognitive science. So in other words, how can you make your screens be efficient for you because you're exhausted, right? Let's say you've been there for 12 hours. You need to like how do you maintain focus, right? And so you have 4 things going on. You have to have situational awareness. So they do work on that, or even helping people in who are in the airplanes, right? Who are doing long missions and have to stay awake for 12 hours and things like that. So there are those groups, and there's also the Army does a huge thing on all the food, all that meals ready to eat. I don't know if y'all ever eaten those. Some are good, but you know. So there's that whole group, and that's in. It's in.
They're in Charleston.
No, there's a note. It's called. It used to be called.
Edgewood?
Say again?
Edgewood is.
Edgewood is the chemical biology. They do chemical biology there. No. Anyway, I'll figure it out in a minute. It's in the state of Boston, Massachusetts. Natick. They're Natick. But they work on all of the different foods and food science stuff. So at NIWIC Pacific specifically for human health, not a lot. It's primarily cognitive science. But there is a Navy Medical Research Center if you're looking here in San Diego.
There's a veterinary science one. We have the dolphins over there.
I'm
Yeah,
more
but-
looking
The
for
mammoths,
the medical
yeah.
research.
They don't hire very much. And they mostly only take interns, which is, and that means you're working for free. And everybody wants to work in the dolphins, right? So that's also super competitive.
Very competitive. These kind of human health, I've noticed, is one of these areas that comes and goes in popularity at DoD. So right now, it's not something that I see being emphasized. When I first started, maybe like 14 years ago, it was emphasized, and there was an encouragement even at NIWIC for us to look into things like TBI testing and things like that. But that's not something they want us to do right now. So we have to listen and kind of do that. But there are, as Mariah was saying, many other bases that do human health for DoD.
Is there somewhere that I could go to help me locate jobs like that?
USA Jobs.
Other than USA Jobs?
There's ONR has a website,
Office of Naval Research.
Office of Naval Research, on their internship program. So if you look at the, what's it called?
NREAD. That's right.
The
Navy Research Enterprise
Program.
Internship Program.
Yeah. The NREAP website,
NREIP.
yeah, has a very good list of the different bases that take in S&T, science and technology and engineering interns. So, and it will have contact information. And so that's a place to go and say, can I get in touch with someone at one of these bases that does something? And so that's a good, the best listing I've seen of where to go find these different locations.
And Brett's right. So there's probably 1,000 NREIP interns, like applications on there. And I don't have time to sort through all that, right? So honestly, it's the people who write me emails, who find me and say, hey, I'm really interested in your lab and blah, blah. So then I'll go and I will actually look at their resume. And I might look at 2 others just to be, so that I can be like unbiased. But it just makes it so much simpler for me if you guys contact us versus, so if you're interested in something, just find out who's doing it and write them yourself, because then that shows a little next level of effort.
My first job I got out of monsters.com. I'm going to tell you that now. So when I got as a contractor, that's how I got picked up. All right. So that's working for projects DoD-wide for a SATCOM system. They do have those. Cleared veterans is one of them. You could go in there and they do have health services. I know the Center for Intrepid, which is in San Antonio, I believe, for health services.
Yep, health service. San Antonio, Brooke Army Medical Center, it's fantastic.
Yes, so.
That is a great place, and I actually worked there during COVID. They called me back out of retirement. I had to go to San Antonio, and everybody else was cleaning their closets, and I was working in a hospital all the time.
So I was there for 2 years to support some stuff, and they have a great medical. That's a big research.
Huge.
And
I would go there.
They have multiple colleges associated with those guys. Look in there. It's the Army. If you go to USA Jobs too, they have it in there for Center of Intrepid, and that's where all that is coming from.
And the Brooke Army Medical Center.
Yeah, Brooke.
It's so funny, like this full circle, because I was trying to stay out of San Antonio because my family is from there.
I love San Antonio, honestly. Well, I went to UTSA. I went to UTSA because I was in the Army and they took me to San Antonio and I really liked it. And I was like, why go to Austin when it's a smaller place at UTSA? And I could work in a lab at UTSA, whereas UT Austin was so huge. It's like, I'll never get in a lab. It's so competitive. So, yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, we'll take maybe 1 or 2 more questions. For the sake of time, and maybe stay ahead.
Everyone has mentioned the importance of networking, and I was wondering if you could give some tips for how to get started for people who are either just starting their careers, about to start, or in my case, trying to switch careers from a completely different industry. Like, I know it's there.
Okay. And you know what they say, you change your job 21 times in your life, right? So networking is one. So honestly, if you are trying to find a job, right, look at that posting and make your resume close to that, right? And because it's sometimes a keyword search on a lot of jobs, even for the contractors. That's how they kind of look at when they're trying to hire somebody. It's how many of those keywords are inside their posting. And also is, you know, do a little bit of research before you go and apply for that job. Go look at that company that you're going to, or that contracting group, or that facility you're working at, right? Find out what their mission is, and, you know, kind of tailor some things towards that. Tailor towards that, right? I see a lot of resumes. I get it, generic is cool, but, you know, putting the time and the thought into it, doing a little bit of research will help a lot.
So I would say something that's really important is to get out and meet people. And so you want to look around for organizations. If you're in San Diego, right, we're all in San Diego. If you're in bio, find out what Biocom is doing. If they're having an event, go to it, talk to people. I used to hate networking, I still hate networking. But you got to get the reps in. You got to practice talking to people about what you do, what you want to do, and Biocom is great. Look around at events that different universities are putting on. Just show up. Don't worry about whether or not you feel like you fit in or not. Doesn't matter. Go to these events that these organizations put on to try and bring companies together. Go look at if a big company is going to do an open house or something, or they've got a product launch event that's open to the public. Go talk to people. If there's San Diego Startup Week, go walk around, talk to people who are there, talk to everyone, right? And just keep track of who you're talking to. If you don't have LinkedIn, get LinkedIn, connect with everyone that you can, and then follow up with people. So if you meet someone that you think is going to be useful, follow up, ask them for advice. So a good trick is instead of just asking someone directly for a job, say like, I'm trying to switch careers, do you have any advice for me? Can we get coffee? People love giving advice. So you'll get that connection, and then the second meeting, do you have anything? Right, so do that social work.
And there are meetups too, right? Like the Women in Science and Engineering has a meetup, and so just go on Meetup and you'll see people who are, there's all kinds of meetups. Salsa dancing.
It's like a dating thing.
Yeah.
I guess. I guess
No,
what
but
are you related to?
No, but I mean, it's like they have, like engineers that like to run, things like that, right? There's all kinds of meetups. So do that, and then you meet people in that field.
Fleet Week and air shows.
Oh, Fleet Week and
And
air
air
shows.
shows are probably one of the biggest ones, because that's where you could get, not only are DoD, but other companies are there, like Cisco, and if they headed the event, they'll usually have people in there marketing their stuff and doing some HR type things.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other last minute questions?
Yes.
I have a question about the Louisiana University internship
Yeah.
you mentioned. What it looked like, what did you do?
Right, so I was walking around at UT, I was at Pan Am. It was called Pan American University, now it's University of Texas Pan American. And they had a flyer because a former professor had been there, and so he was now at LSU, and so he was trying to just offer, because a lot of South Texans have never been out of South Texas, so he was trying to offer opportunities. And so it was interesting because they had a panel, like 4 people asking me questions, and I honestly had only been, I was a baby sophomore, but they liked my answer because they asked me, well, why do you want to do this? And I said, well, I work in a lab and I do this and this, but I want to know, why do the bacteria grow on that particular media? Why do the bacteria do this thing? And so anyway, they take me, and there at LSU, what it was it was kind of like an NREAP thing, but for undergraduates. And they were trying to help us to figure out how to go to graduate school eventually was their goal. And so we just went to many different labs and we talked to different professors. And the one that I liked was the microbiology professor. And again, I was like 18, so I didn't really know much about microbes, but I liked his lab and what he was doing. And he was an older professor who taught me how to pipette by mouth, which is something, And we were working on Vibrio olnificus, which actually is a toxin. Yeah, so anyway, right. But it was great because he had patience for this I was 19, I just turned 19. So he had patience for this 19-year-old to work in his lab and show me how to do things. And like I wouldn't sign stuff the right way, but he showed me, hey, whenever you're labeling, you have to label it in this way with the date, with your name, with this, so that everybody knows whose it is, and we know, right, to throw it away or not. So many universities have internships. Summer internship programs. So if you're interested in a place like Louisiana or Delaware or whatever, I guarantee you almost all of those universities have summer internships. So you should go onto their websites and just find out and do it. Why not, right? I mean, if you don't have something compelling holding you at home and you want to travel, I think it's a great opportunity because they let me live in the dorm, and that's the only time in my life I've ever lived in a dorm. But it was, just an opportunity. And by the way, that internship, because of that, I got the Scripps internship, right? So one internship leads to another internship, which leads to another internship, and then people like that. And it's kind of sad because it's always, well, who's going to give you the first, right? But you got to just keep networking.
Just want to say thank you to our amazing panelists. Such great people.